Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first ever Sree podcast, this time of my newsletter from November 12th, 2024. I'm trying to make a video podcast, an audio podcast, all at the same time, and I'm trying to learn. One of my favorite hashtags, always be learning. For those of you who already subscribe to my newsletter at Substack, sreenet.substack.com, thank you. If you don't subscribe, hope you'll sign up. It's also available on LinkedIn. If you find me on LinkedIn, there's a newsletter there as well. About 15,000 people subscribe between both those channels, and I'm so grateful to everyone who opens it, reads it, comments, shares, and gives me feedback, both constructive and sometimes not so constructive, but I love hearing from everybody. So thank you for being here as I try this new experiment. We're going to be looking at my column, The Land of Opportunity, from November 12th, 2024. Notes on the elections, immigrants, and a request to pay attention. I survived the elections by talking and listening. On, around, and after the elections, I was live hosting shows on more than 10 hours for Scroll and Scroll Global and Indian Express, and was then interviewed multiple times on other networks, including Barkha Dutt's Mojo Story and Nader Rahman's Tikana. You can see all my coverage on digimentors.group. Look for the election coverage button. Here's a memo I wrote in prep for my morning after shows. Let's see how much I predicted comes true. If the results had gone the other way, we would have been bracing for violence nationwide, instigated by Donald Trump lying about a victory. The fact that we are not tells you something about both sides and how Republicans used to be. There were close battles in the states, but this can only be seen as a major win for Trump and MAGA. J.D. Vance, a deeply flawed man, will inevitably be the standard bearer of the party. He will do great damage to America for years to come. Yes, the price of eggs played a role, but it was so much more than that. The economy is strong, but people don't feel it. The fiscally conservative Economist magazine said it would vote for Kamala Harris if it could. Misogyny and racism played a role. There will not be a female Democratic nominee for president for many cycles. Harris should have distanced herself from Joe Biden earlier and more clearly, but that's easy for us to say now. A right-wing media ecosystem has made it impossible for half of America to know what's really happening in the world. Until Democrats build their own, they will suffer electoral defeats. Plus, the ever-diminishing traditional media has to learn to focus on real issues, not just horse race journalism. Joe Rogan and Elon Musk are factors in young men voting, typically low turnout voters. They're celebs of a different kind, as powerful as Beyonce, Taylor Swift, George Clooney, etc. The right makes fun of the Hollywood elite, but these are some of the right-wing elite. The $44 billion Musk spent on Twitter was a steal. What a low price to pay for the presidency, to buy a presidency, to buy a country. Control of all three branches of government plus the Supreme Court will be a recipe for disaster. Project 2025 is about to become real. Not every bit of it, but most likely the worst parts. A 7-2 majority in the Supreme Court is very likely, along with Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito being replaced by 40-year-olds. Unfettered control of cabinet appointments with no way to stop some of the worst nominees. Get ready to hear about Vivek Ramaswamy, Tulsi Gabbard, and other deplorables nonstop for 4 years at least. Get ready for Health Secretary RFK Jr., banning of vaccines, return of measles, etc. Women's right to health care will be decimated. Grave damage to the planet and acceleration of the climate emergency with a cabinet full of climate change deniers. Putin unleashed. Ukraine will lose land permanently. Netanyahu unleashed. Gaza will continue to be pounded, and so will Lebanon. China emboldened about Taiwan. Withdrawal from NATO is on the cards. Tariffs on China will raise prices on everything. Mass deportations will be devastating in ways its supporters can't predict. The rise of white Christian nationalism is going to accelerate. I will keep tabs on this list, and I'm happy to be proven wrong. What's on your list? And now, a tale of two sets of immigrants. The first set are people who come to America, toil quietly in their field of work, succeed immensely, and leave the country better than they found it. The other set of people who are those who arrive here, succeed immensely, and then decide to reshape the country in many ways that leave it worse than they found it. My friend Vibhuti Patel was in the first category. An editor at Newsweek for 3 decades after arriving here from India, she was an arts journalist who wrote hundreds of articles and did countless interviews with some of the top names in the arts for Newsweek, the Wall Street Journal, and other publications. She died the Sunday before the election, making sure to vote for Kamala Devi Harris, and handed me the absentee ballot to put in the mail. We will miss you, Vibhuti. Rest in power. In the newsletter edition, you can see images of her voting and holding the envelope that she gave me. And you can also see beautiful pictures of her at Newsweek wearing a sari, which she did every day for 30 years. And you can see 2 moments in time. Vibhuti Patel, journalist, writer, teacher, 1942 to 2024. In the second category of immigrants are 3 to the United States with ties to apartheid-era South Africa. They're using their immense financial success to make their adopted country worse than they found it. You all know about South African-born Elon Musk, who worked illegally in America after dropping out of Stanford, and to some extent Peter Thiel, a German who spent part of his childhood in South Africa. But you likely never heard of another South African American, David Sachs, unless you spend too much time on Twitter or watch the more obscure parts of the Republican National Convention. Trump himself is clearly an empty vessel. He will do what benefits him the most in almost every situation. If there's nothing to be lost or gained, he'll simply outsource the decision to the loudest other voice in the room at that moment. This will have profound consequences at every level of government, across every agency, and as such will touch the lives of everyone. But these 3 South African connected people have Trump's ear, and that should worry us plenty. Musk, who I've warned about again and again and again and again, I wrote at least 9 columns about him, has already cashed in on the $100 million he spent to get Trump elected by joining him on a call with the Ukrainian president. Fits right in with his idea of only high-status males should be allowed to run government, with no room for women or men with low testosterone. Sachs is even more of an ideologue than Musk. There are thousands of tweets and other online gristle to sift through if you want to get a flavor of Sachs' whole deal. But I think this blog post from 2021 perfectly encapsulates his worldview. Read this paragraph and then check out all the links that Sachs provides. Just as there is no definition of hate speech that everyone agrees on, he says, the definition of a hate group is nebulous and ripe for overuse by those with an agenda. So it should come as no surprise that the ever-increasing list of suspects has grown from unquestionable hate groups such as neo-Nazis and the KKK to organizations that espouse socially conservative views like the Family Research Council, religious liberty advocates, and even groups concerned with election integrity. By the way, the Family Research Council espouses conversion therapy to cure LGBTQ plus people, and that's just one thing on its long, awful list of priorities. You'll read this post and you'll find it impossible to agree with his libertarian fever dream of an ideology. This entire cohort is made up of super rich techno-libertarians, and Thiel may be the quiet king in waiting of them all. He hired VP-elect J.D. Vance at his venture capital firm, bankrolled the election to the Senate in Ohio with a cool $15 million, and now has his man in the White House. Thiel is almost solely responsible for Vance's career advancement, and there's good reason to believe that Thiel's brand of no-holds-barred capitalism will find many willing compatriots in the next Trump administration. Thiel's seminal work was a book called The Diversity Myth, co-authored with Sachs, and his Demagoguery and Little Else. In 2022, James Pogue wrote a great piece on the Thielian New Right and all of its strange nihilism, but it was prescient to say the least. Please read it, especially the extensive sections about Vance. Now, this is where I would write something thoughtful, rousing, looking ahead, but instead, I will ask you all to just pay attention, listen, understand what's happening in the days and weeks and months ahead. Tuning out is not an option. Coasting is not an option. America, with its disproportionate, sometimes distasteful impact on the world, is too important to accept blindly and also too important to give up on. We can still make it better. Connect with me on Twitter @Sree, Instagram SreeNet, LinkedIn /Srinivasan, Facebook, YouTube, Threads, and on a new platform called Spread. Check it all out. You will also see in my newsletter a wonderful tech tip every week by the great Robert Anthony. Bob is a veteran tech journalist who shares a tech tip you don't want to miss. Follow him @New York Bob and check out his 1.1 million followers on Pinterest. And with that, I'll say goodbye and thank you to everyone for listening and for helping me do this very first episode of my podcast in this manner. Thank you very much and see you soon. Bye-bye.